Those Wild Days of Life. Probably some books I didn't talk about on here when I went over the memoir shelves before. I hear this is really good. 1952 masterpiece across the racial divide. A new model of what a novel can be. I love stuff like that. One of the most audacious and dazzling novels of our century. Well, I should read that. Wait, it's a novel? Oh, it's in the wrong section. You live here now. These are the books of your family. Treasure them. This has been worth it already. This looks like a great memoir. It's a pretty good design. It's kind of a cool, striking book. Ooh, back's especially good. Dune Boy. The, memoir of childhood of a naturalist. That's like a fantastic topic. I bet at the end he gets eaten by a sandworm. It's a little joke, a little Dune joke. George Sand, I hear, was an influence on Dostoevsky. I have never read George Sand, but here's The Intimate Journal. Whoa. Private journals. A whole person as woman, lover, mother, artist, politician, chatelaine, and friend. It's a cool looking book. Hey, remember when I mentioned on this channel during that first Freebox video about running over a speed bump in a rich neighborhood that was particularly evil? I mean, the bump was. I think it may have cracked my engine coolant case. Car problems now. Great. Books are literally ruining my life. I wouldn't have been in that neighborhood if I wasn't on the prowl for free boxes. The rich lured me in like an anglerfish into their neighborhoods so they could break my car and make me even poorer and widen the class divide further. And that's just not nice. Why would they want to do that? Because the wider the divide, the more power they have over the lower. Come on. I think we've solved the cases on these little free libraries, what they're all about now. They are literally used to disseminate religious and government propaganda at different times. I could make a real case here if I wanted to. And as Native American writers have pointed out, even things like classical music can be part of a colonizing effort, when introduced to a populace. Like there is a colonizing aspect to NPR stations you can hear on the res. I haven't read this, but I really loved the movie. I've watched it like 3 times. I think it's the best movie ever made. What am I talking about? I read this. But that movie lives large in my mind. There's only so many long-distance hiking movies. There's Tramp, 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 directed by Frank Capra with the silent clown Harry Langdon. That's all right, but that's about a competitive walking across the country contest. There's The Way, about the Camino Real in Spain and someone's experience of hiking that. There's A Walk in the Woods, based on Bill Bryson's book. And I've tried to like that movie, but it's pretty weak and it has a couple of big flaws. It doesn't commit to being rooted in a time, and so it just feels like nothing. And there's Wild. There's something else, too, that I'm forgetting. Well, there's that remake of the movie Wrong Turn. That's set on the Appalachian Trail, but it might involve hikers, but different. There's a really low-budget horror film I found out about 6 hikers, which blew my mind, that I think is from 2001. That wasn't too good either. Yeah, I was in a group of 6 hikers in 2001, so that movie existed. What was it called? Found it on Tubi, that streaming app. But this is a great book with real stakes. She doesn't hike the whole Pacific Crest Trail, which as a hiker, I'm like, oh, I wish she'd done the whole trail. But she does a huge section of it, and it's transformative. And there's so many beautiful scenes in that movie and in this story. I don't know. It's cool to cultivate a wild streak that wants to get outdoors and do big things, I think, in your life. It will benefit your life. When I was young, I canoed for 7 months around a desert reservoir, and I walked across the country up from Florida to Quebec with a charity hike. I hitchhiked from Alaska all over northern Canada and down to Montana and Utah. And I lived as a hermit in the forests and deserts of the world at different times. So this sort of thing really appeals to me. She's now a famous columnist. She writes that Dear Sugar column. That's become its own thing, and I think there's movies from it, or at least a movie. We also once had a positive interaction on Twitter, and that was cool. As a kid, I was really traumatized by the movie The Day After. And it was a TV movie depicting a nuclear war. People forget, but the Cold War had really been resurrected in the 80s. I grew up with so many nuclear fears. Read my essay, 101 Jokes for Epileptic Children, at the New Delta Review's website if you want to hear the particulars. Yeah, 101 Jokes for Epileptic Children. Also a chapter of the book I've been working on. But I had so many nuclear fears, and the day after, I just remember watching that. I must have been like 4. And why did my dad let me watch that? It was just because he really wanted to see it, probably. It was a much hyped television event. We were on a little road trip. He was a traveling salesman, but he would always bring his kids with him whenever he could and add like amusement park stops and stuff. He was a great dad, and it was a cool way to grow up. He sold playgrounds to schools and parks. He'd always be like, come help me test the playgrounds. You can see a depiction of him in my brother Rob's as Obert Sky's book series, The Creature from My Closet. That's what cuteness looks like in sleek, dark beauty. All right, here's my dad as depicted in my brother's book series. But it's so totally from my childhood. I mean, from that place. I bring fun to children. Help. That's how my dad looked. It's true, too, that he always thought everyone he met was his new best friend. Hey, don't I know you? That depends if you ever spent any time in jail. This series is great. It's basically my childhood secretly turned into a fictional series. It's cool having an older sibling that is an author. Anyway, so I was on the road with my dad to some playground sales thing. Yeah, and this came on TV. And it was so scary. I'd never seen anything more terrifying in my life. It was so real. I don't think I barely like mastered object permanence at 4. Give me a break. I think it was like that kind of crying where you're just totally quiet, but water is just leaking involuntarily and fast from the sides of both eyes. This is so scary. And it's still scary. I watched that movie recently. I have it on DVD. Joyce Hampton. The day after Joyce Hampton. The day after and the day after the day after. That's a bad quote. The Hollywood Reporter. Provocative, apocalyptic, gut-wrenching. That doesn't even sound like that could have been in an article. Thoughtful and terrifying. Moving and dramatic. It is. It's still scary because we could still all die in a horrifying nuclear way. The ending of the movie Rogue One, where all the characters stand on a beach as the Death Star destroys the whole planet and they all die in fire. I'm like, so that's what our future will look like. I hope that's not true. But this guy who wrote this book is like me. He grew up in Lawrence, Kansas, and I've grown up in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And those are two, arguably, the most nuclear towns in America. Albuquerque is the city at the end of the world, as V.B. Price called it in his book title. And Lawrence, Kansas is like nuclear missile silos and all that sort of stuff. And this movie was filmed there. And so he grew up where that was filmed. That is a wild feeling. Like, I can remember watching episodes of Breaking Bad in which, like, the FBI are spying on drug dealers using a floral van parked nearby. And then, like, I left and I drove through Albuquerque and I saw a drug deal going on at a concrete picnic bench and a van that was, like, watching it. I'm like, I'm in that show. So that is a really weird phenomenon. And I had many such Breaking Bad moments. Atomic angst. Stephen Church grew up in the 70s and 80s in Lawrence, Kansas. Is that what I said? Childhood was quiet on the surface, but Stephen grew up anxious, afraid of tornadoes, monkeys. Yeah, the 80s were a very fearful time. I remember being afraid of kidnapped, satanic cultists, nuclear stuff. Also, this movie, Adam, that terrified everybody. It was based on a true story of a child abduction and murder. And my sister was babysitting one time, and she let me watch that one. And then my parents were, like, pretty religious, so they bought into the whole satanic panic thing, and, like, we were worried about our cats and stuff. What else do we have here? Speak Memory. That's the book. I also remember looking at that. Tobias Wolff, I know, is a really good writer. I've only read excerpts in grad school. Amish Farmer's Journal. That's cool. I've had quite a few experiences with the Amish from that walk across the country. Once I tried to corrupt this cool Amish guy that I met, and he really wanted to get into photography. We were at a store together that sold like everything. It was like a forever garage sale place. That place was a story in itself. Royce McKinney, Peach Bottom, Pennsylvania. And this Amish kid, he was really cool. We were having like a great talk, and he was looking at this camera like, I've always thought I might be good at photography. Sometimes I look at stuff and I see a picture. And I'm like, I'll get it for you, man. Let me buy it for you right now. Full of glee, you know. Haha. I will lead him to the world of radios and zippers. I serve technology. No, I just, if someone has an artistic desire to pursue, you got to encourage that. And And not everything about that culture is like great, you know. And of course, we're supposed to be cool and understanding of other cultures and so on. But the Amish are like actually a dangerously insular group in some ways. They only had 16 surnames at the time of one book that I read about them. And because of such a small genetic pool, they are one of only two groups in America that has this really horrible condition happen with some frequency where kids are born with only a brainstem and in this like permanent vegetative state. And the other group is the FLDS in Colorado City on the Utah-Arizona border. And I visited that group. I have crazy stories about that group. But the Amish are really cool in a lot of ways, but they've fallen into this like letter of the law nonsense that's like really tacky to see when you see it. Like the Amish, for instance, you can turn a radio or a TV on for them, but they can't touch the stuff themselves. I at least once was asked to turn a radio on for an old farmer so he could listen to a baseball game. And then you all the time see just like some like, you know, slobby, gross guy in a minivan smoking a cigar with like a filthy shirt who's not Amish driving a van full of Amish people. Like they're being shuttled around in a van. And it's like, you know, I don't know. I mean, have your beliefs and weirdness and stuff. But, you know, when it's so letter of the law, it's like, there's no beauty to it. It's not like, look at these simple, quaint lifestyles. No, you're like finding every way possible to break the rules because they don't make sense to you. And you want to use radios and minivans. And then no one learns moderation. And they have, if you've ever seen that movie, The Devil's Playground, I think it's called, a documentary about Rumspringa, the Amish gone wild, basically. They get a chance to go see if they like the world, but they're not taught how to do anything like that or to make it a thoughtful time. They just go and like immediately get hooked on meth. And, you know, their lives just get trashed. Anyway, Mike, you're supposed to be tolerant of all religions and just say good stuff about all religions. Yeah, you know, there's probably good stuff to say about all religions. And the Amish history is very interesting. It's a part of the same history as the Mennonites and the Baptists. It goes back to Munich, Germany, and a huge standoff that was had in the 1500s with this walled city and a religious cult taking over the place and then being starved out, attacked out. And Baptists were once considered super fringe. When my ancestors joined up with Baptists in the 1700s, they were like, they were often ostracized for it, something like that. Quakers had the biggest stigma. Being a Quaker was punishable by being driven out of town barebacked, you know, regardless of gender, and whipped all the way out of town. Yeah, we don't want a theocracy. Anytime we start moving toward that stuff, I'm like, This book, I already mentioned that. Diaries. Yeah, diaries made their way into Memoir. Bryson's Memoir. I owe that guy a debt. He really helped me out once. He's a famous author, but I went to a book signing of his in Cambridge, Massachusetts when I was putting together that hike across the country and gave him a press kit. Told him about what we were doing, and he gave us a bunch of money and sponsored us. Wait, am I allowed to say this? This was a long time ago. He probably wouldn't do that anymore. Don't ask him. Don't bug him. But we had a really good cause. And, you know, it was hiking for charity, and he really helped make it happen. So did the author John Krakauer. Those two made that whole thing possible. Because of their names, we got Columbia as a sponsor, and all the other sponsors followed as a result. And so thank you, Bill Bryson. He agreed to hike with us too, but then we didn't end up going by his house like we thought we would because our whole path changed because one of our hikers got tendonitis and we had to push him in a wheelchair across Virginia. It was a crazy story. And so we got off the Appalachian Trail and onto all these back roads. We had previously hiked the Florida Trail, a bunch of roads and small trails, and then the Appalachian Trail. And so we had to leave the Appalachian Trail for our injured hiker and got this thrift store wheelchair and pushed him through all the dirt back roads of Virginia and saw wild stuff. Stayed at a 4-story tall lotus flower with a bunch of monks on the banks of the St. James River, where, what happened? Sri Swami Satchitananda reigned over all. He was the guy who said the prayer at Woodstock. Anyway, we saw the real Virginia and the real South because we got off those roads and it was off those trails, and we didn't just have a trail experience. We had a wild experience. I wrote a 7-episode miniseries about it. Hopefully it'll see real life someday. I also have a series Bible for it that explains how it could be made economically. And all that'll be a chapter in my book, the longest chapter of book 1, 500 pages, ha ha ha. But it's broken into 7 parts, and those are broken into scenes, and it'll be fine. I added more description than your usual screenplay would contain. This is a varied book. I'll be fine. I'm happy to have this book for what it's about, and who it's by, but also, wow, it's a great one of them old books. I just think this is such a great premise. I know I looked at it before, but the idea of a stream of consciousness memoir, like trying to cover your whole life, but just one thing at a time as it comes to you, that's brilliant. And Hijinian also did that with My Life, and it's a great idea. I think it could be a form. The best ideas are genres, I always say. The lifelong ramble, the autobiographical ramble. My advisor again, Greg Martin. Love this book. It's a great book. And then this book, America One Step at a Time. I met this guy a long time ago when we were doing our walk across the country, a 3,400-mile walk in search of America. And me and my group, we were really excited about him because he said he was going to hike through all 50 states in a single continuous line, or all 48. And he would end in such a way that he could continue on to Alaska if he wanted to. But that could be Peach Bottom, Pennsylvania there with that nuclear silo there I was just talking about. It says who the front cover photo is by, but it doesn't say where it's on. Anyway, I feel a little bit bad. I think the last time I talked to this guy, I wasn't positive. Tui, that was his trail name. If you ever see this, I'm sorry. My brother and I were I think we were really disappointed that you didn't do the whole 50 state hike, and that when this book came out, you made it sound like that just walking across your country was your whole goal, which I totally understand now. I think, tell your story however you want to tell it. If you need to leave that out, that's fine. I don't think that hurts the achievement. It's an amazing achievement. You walked across the country. That's about what our East Coast hike was. I've heard 3,600, but it could have been 3,400. But yeah, I met this guy when he walked through New Mexico. My then brother and I kept going out and picking him up. Check this out. St. Vrain, driven through there many times, named after a trapper. Ew. I drained my blisters, and I was glad to be in New Mexico, excited to be out in the open plains, out where you can see from horizon to horizon, and the sky seems to go on forever. I had just stopped to refill my drinking bottle from a supply bottle in my pack when a car pulled over. Out of the car jumped Mike and Jeff Smith, 2 fellow hikers I had met in Virginia the year before. They, too, had been following my journey on the internet and drove down from Albuquerque to see if they could find me. We hugged, laughed, and talked for nearly an hour before they had to get back home. I hiked a few more miles before finding a campsite. As I sat cooking dinner, 2 black crows visited me. They flew so close to me that I could hear their wings flapping in the wind. I was alone in the quiet of dusk, happy with my new shoes and the health of my feet, happy to be exploring New Mexico. Hey, that's interesting. I didn't know that poetic thing with the crows happened. Yeah, that is me and my sibling. We are 2 crows. Fitting. Yeah, I feel like the last time I talked to this guy, my brother and I were both kind of negative. You didn't do all 50 states, and then you wrote this book. And he had a really good defense. His defense was, I met the love of my life and got married, and it changed everything. And that is a thing that happened. That's one of the reasons that we got to know him. And there's other passages about us meeting up with him, because he would fly back to Ohio once in a while, just from wherever he was, so he could see this lady. So I'm going to reread this sometime and send him a nice email or something. Hey, dude, hope you're still good in the world. As seen on the Fine Living Channel's Radical Sabbatical TV show. Oh, I guess you could watch a show about this. Live your dreams. Squirrel agrees. We don't know how we can even live and eat food. I had kind of a Stephen Hawking reading kick. I read all his books, and boy, they're complicated. I mean, even his pop science books, I'm like, how did these get so popular? Do people actually read these? They're really challenging. That's his memoir, which that movie was based on. All right, well, this has been just one shelf of forgotten memoir, things I didn't really talk about going through it before. I knew there was more in this section. Maybe I'll do 2 more videos or 3 more videos. I don't know. Or 1, I don't know. But I'm going to keep looking at memoir stuff I neglected to look at before. This is kind of an assessment of the collection, this channel for me too. I want to see what's here. That one I discovered that should have gone in the novels, There's only 3 memoir shelves, but that's kind of getting full. All right, I'm going to go see my friend Ty, say hey, and hopefully my car makes it. Later, everybody.